Hey, I'm Hollis, and welcome to the Friendly Fangirl podcast, where I nerd out on the films, shows, and video games that I encounter every week. Be sure to follow this podcast, and please follow my Twitter and blog at Hollis Films to follow my journey experiencing the entertainment industry's greatest stories. Beware of spoilers, you have been warned. Last of Us, Part 2. Get ready, guys. So my thoughts before starting the sequel the first time, I was very interested in the story. I might have been the only one, but I still thought Abby was Ellie's mom going into the game. So her story seemed promising at first. I thought Dina was going to die, and that's what would set Ellie on this revenge quest. Plus, it may have been my excitement, the misleading trailers, or ignorance to details, but it definitely seemed like Joel was setting up to play a bigger part, so I was fully expecting him to join Ellie on her quest. I totally expected him to die at some point, at least in the final act or in a scene that leads to the final act. No matter what my expectations were, I went into the sequel fully aware that the game might suck. I was fully prepared to be disappointed. The Last of Us is my favorite game of all time, so I still had hope that the game and story would blow me away. Spoiler alert, I did not like it. A very shameless plug to my blog. I wrote a whole thesis about the game on my blog, Hollis Films. It's several thousand words long. It took me several months to write, rewrite, edit, rewrite again. It's so hard to articulate my thoughts on this part 2. I hate Abby, and I hated Joel's death, which is the generic reasons to hate this game, but I wanted it to be clear that there are levels to those reasons, and I also wanted to deep dive into what makes the game good. So yeah, that blog post was somewhat therapeutic, and even if you read one paragraph, I would appreciate that. So for this podcast, I'm going to pick out a few of my favorite segments from the blog to talk about. Several thousand words. You better believe I wrote about everything, and I will not read it all now. I want to start with my overall thoughts on gameplay, because gameplay is where it's at. I would only play this game if I skipped the cutscenes, as playing the actual game is a perfect experience. I don't even know where to begin. Skill menu and upgrade system got a little makeover. Collectibles from both Abby and Ellie, really cool. Some areas are so explorable that it feels like an open world at times, though it's still a pretty linear experience. Maps and notes are discussed and even relevant in-game, not just used for cool world-building exposition. Lots of in-game dialogue, cool idle animations, party members look around and seem to pass more useful items. NPCs as a whole just seem more useful. Death animations are somehow more brutal, if not more cinematic. The audio design in this game has added a new level to the horror aspects of the environment, more than the first. This is most apparent when it comes to the new types of infected that we encounter. I love how Ellie uses her knife, a welcoming sight compared to the limited use of shivs with Joel and Abby, though Abby's crossbow is pretty nifty. Animations make the characters seem more alive, like when they weapon swap or when they input an upgrade. There's a big use to the environment, such as the various puzzles involving ropes and climbing, as well as breakable windows that can be used for exploration or distractions. And the new prone feature adds a new depth to stealth. As someone who is a big scaredy cat and thrives on stealth, this is a highlight for me. Not only is it useful for stealth, but you can also shoot while being prone, which is pretty awesome. Welcome to Seattle. Ellie exploring Seattle is one of the best, most fun parts of the game, and it's so long. Honestly, it makes me forget that I'm mad at Mr. Neal. You can delve into the polished gameplay, gorgeous graphics, and game design, and have simple fun playing a video game. The story is the only chance to breathe. Even as Ellie starts getting into the thick of it, I would say it's not until Nora, when the game starts to get really heavy again. Abby is out of sight, out of mind, for me anyways, for hours. Just the way I like her. Dina talks a lot about herself in this part. I guess it's her only chance to, given that she sits out the rest of the game. Hearing pieces of her exposition built her up to be so interesting. It seems her mom and sister are both dead, so she may be living in Jackson on her own with the rest of her family gone, a norm for most. But she has come to terms with it and has already gone through the character development that comes with that. As she brings up memories of her family, she talks about them as a fully fledged character with a full life behind her, which makes her a bit different from Ellie, who is still going through such a transition in her own character arc. I did love their dialogue in the synagogue. It's really the first time that religion is really discussed in The Last of Us. Other than Sam's conversation in the last game, religion has had such a huge absence in typical religious practices and beliefs. So it was cool to hear Dina's experience with her family trying to carry Judaism into the apocalypse. As we make our way to the TV station, we're introduced to the concept of explosive traps. Now, this is nothing new if you've played the first game. However, we're roaming a city that has an overabundance of overgrown grass and foliage. Part 2 has made it harder to spot these traps, and that makes exploration just a little more scarier. Then we actually get to the station. We see a trail of bodies as we get closer and closer, mostly assuming it was all Tommy. Then we see the hanging bodies, and we definitely know there is another party killing the wolves too. What's interesting is that up to this point in NPC dialogue and several notes found, we've only seen a glimpse into these scars, but this is the first time Ellie sees firsthand what they're capable of. And I don't know about Ellie, but at this point, I'm absolutely terrified and creeped out by the scars already. Now we get to the moment when Ellie and Dina are real with each other. There was a nice moment when Ellie breaks her mask. Really good voice acting in that scene there. But Ellie ends up reminding Dina of the immunity secret, and then Dina reveals that she may be pregnant. Now, that's not a problem. However, the game makes it to be one. To me, it seems that Dina's pregnancy is used as a plot device to isolate Ellie on day 2, so she's alone when she meets up with Jesse that day. I don't know, it just feels like there was a missed opportunity to have this trio go ham on these Seattle denizens. The trio of getting things done already have an awesome dynamic that just isn't explored fully, like I feel like it should be. And it would have been so much greater seeing them tackle this mission as a team. Instead, we get little time with either character, and it's very easy to lose interest and not care about them after a certain point. I mean, getting a little ahead of myself here, but this is an issue that I have, a big issue I have with the game, and it starts with Dina and Jesse. WLF. Joel and Ellie came across a few civilizations on their journey, but Jackson was the first of its kind that we saw. No soldiers, no hunters, no cannibals. It was a thriving city. So it's nice to jump into Abby's journey and walk through the WLF headquarters, which sits in a sports stadium. This was pretty cool to explore at the beginning. There is a civil war in the city as the WLF are continuously attacked by the Seraphites, and vice versa, with casualties and brutal war crimes enacted by and enacted toward both sides. The Last of Us, in apocalypse survival fashion, shows that neither side reads black or white. I still don't completely understand the roots of this war. I'm sure there's exposition through some more notes, given notes we've already found as Ellie at this point. We've been able to gather how brutal the Seattle War is, and Ellie dove headfirst into it on her quest to find Abby, leading to some deadly counters from both sides. Now we're getting a point of view from the inside. Wolves versus scars. That plot is honestly the strongest story point in the entire game for me, and I always found it interesting ever since my first playthrough. There's just so much to unpack from it. Alright, how do you feel playing as Abby? This is when the fan base divides in opinions most of all. Your attachment to the first game, attachment to Joel and or Ellie, and your reaction to Joel's death dictates how you react and feel as you spend the next hours playing as Abby. Some people loved this half of the game. Some people don't. It's like Harry Potter's Severus Snape. You either love Snape or you hate Snape. There is not an in-between. In this case, you're either open about learning more about Abby's perspective, or you refuse to give her an inch of sympathy and wish death upon her the entire time. There is no in-between. As biased as I am, I have calmed down a bit about the whole story, and I will no longer attack anybody who says Abby is their favorite character. I was one of those toxic people on the internet, I will admit, when I replied with the utmost disgust to anyone who defended the character. However, I still hate Abby, and while my opinion has changed on different things, I hate Abby, and I always will. Everyone please stand and salute the real hero and best character of the game, Lev. Jumping to the island, arriving and exploring the island of the Seraphites is the best thing I could have asked for this game. I absolutely loved exploring the Seraphite land, looting their villages, seeing the architecture, getting a sense of how they lived. Of course, taking out enemies along the way was inevitable. It's actually kind of sad because technically at this point, Abby is a neutral party. She's killing people from a side that she's actually sympathizing for. We're essentially navigating through a war zone, leaving bodies from what is about to become a dwindling society, and it's honestly sort of sad. We find Lev, who accidentally kills his mom in self-defense, and oh my god, I love this character. I sympathize with him so much, and if anyone hurts him, I want Abby to kill everyone in the room and then herself. Just kidding. Just kidding. Not really, but yeah. As the trio tries to escape the island, the trio becomes a duo when Yara dies. Please, 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 please send Laura Bailey love. I really loved her voice acting in this scene. Then Abby drops the "You're my people" line, and that really hits the moral of her and Lev's story hard. Still hate Abby, but this moment of the story was top tier. At this moment, Abby and Lev traverse their way to a fiery haven, and this sequence is insanely incredible, especially the horseback part. It's total chaos, a bloody war zone, a total massacre of people on both sides. This is humanity, guys. It's intense to play, and honestly my favorite part of the game. Alright, so some overall thoughts. Joel's death is an essay unto itself. I have not addressed it here, but I will say, read my blog for more details. But I want it to be clear, I did not hate Joel's death until the end of the game. I really want that to be clear. I didn't rage quit like so many others. I gave part 2 a chance, and in the end, I still hated it. It's not that Joel died. It's not even him dying at the hands of Abby. It just boils down to the sequence of events that led to his death. Again, read my blog for more details. Hollis Films. Now, closing off with how I would have done it, because every time I think about this game, I inevitably dwell on how it could have gone differently. I don't think I'm the only one that thinks this, but part 2 should have been part 3, and part 2 should have been the in-between. Imagine, we go through Abby's arrival to Seattle, we see her experience the war, we watch her build up, and give very little backstory until she gets the intel on Jackson. We play through the hospital scene at the end, see the dead doctor, realize who Abby is, and then we realize that this woman that we've grown to love is after our very own Joel. I mean, that would have messed me up. Meanwhile, Joel and Ellie live their life in Jackson. Ellie finds out the truth and gets mad, but their story ends with Ellie's forgiveness. So the game would have ended with a sweet moment between them, but we know Joel is marked for death, and that's the cliffhanger that leads into the third installment. We would have liked Abby and have more time with Joel. Actually, more time with all the side characters we didn't give a crap about. Like, the third game would be almost the same besides the flashbacks, and just maybe I would have cried for Jesse and Owen the way I cried for Tess or Henry and Sam. Unfortunately, we got what we got. For me, every good part of the game comes with 2 complaints I can rant about. The Last of Us Part 2 won Game of the Year, which is absurd to me because Final Fantasy VII Remake and Ghost of Tsushima came out that year and were perfect from start to finish. They got no recognition, and all the hype around Part 2 was just all propaganda. This game will always leave a sour taste in my mouth. But I know a lot of people liked it way more than I did, and after a few years of resentment, I guess this is something I can now accept. The Last of Us show of the week. I'm gonna be honest, I did not watch it. The Last of Us, HBO's adaptation of the first game, has come and gone, and I want to tell you why I did not watch it, and also tell you why you should. So, being blunt here, if I were to watch the show, I would nitpick everything. And before you think, oh, you should give it a chance anyway, I literally mean I saw reviews and whatnot and still managed to complain about things. I would inadvertently ruin the whole experience for myself. The game's story is just so perfect. I mean, I've written a whole essay, mentioned it on a podcast. My love for the game would simply just ruin the show for me. I'll give one specific example. The Bill episode. See, what I love about the game and Bill's character is that his whole relationship with Frank is heavily implied. To see that relationship play out is great. However, I would have totally hated that episode because of how it changed canon. I think it was much more depressing that in the game they died apart because of relationship issues, which is so heartbreaking knowing that they're soulmates. And most of all, Bill's interactions with Ellie made that whole segment so iconic. I get why people like the Bill episode, but it's just not it for me. Not it, fam. And bonus complaint, because this is the episode where I complain about everything. I'm just tired of live action adaptations. I'm not gonna watch this show. I'm not gonna watch The Last Airbender. I haven't watched a Disney live action since Aladdin. I can't anymore. I don't care how it is. I don't care how good it is. We don't need live action remakes. Show some love to the original animations and God, please. Now that being said, I must throw my bias aside and admit that The Last of Us has great potential to be a solid, even phenomenal viewing experience for anyone who is not me. The cast? OMG. I did not think Pedro was a good fit, but he actually kind of was. I also like how Ellie looks more like Ashley Johnson than the actual Ellie from the game. And even though I feel like this Joel and Ellie were picked from HBO's Game of Thrones hand-me-downs, they did a good job. Gabriel Luna, my baby. I have been following this man's career since he was ghostwriter in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I am so proud of him. Also, did I mention Ashley Johnson? Yeah, most important factor for me is that they had the original voice actors in the show. I'm going to try really hard not to complain about how Nolan North got a 2-second cameo in Uncharted. So, Marlene has the same actor in the show and in the game. That's awesome. Tommy and Joel, their original voice actors, have notable guest appearances as well. But, holy mother, round of applause for Ashley Johnson. It took me 5 minutes on Twitter to see how phenomenal she was. She was the star of the week once on this podcast. I don't need reminding how awesome she is. You do. And also, I swear, I'm actually not complaining this time. We had an awesome Abby cameo. As in Laura Bailey into house. OMG. These two women. I watched too much Critical Role. Overall, it seems like a legit show, a decent adaptation. Allow me to be cynical about it, but guys, go ahead and enjoy it. My only hope is that it inspires you to play the original game, as the game is still perfection. Complaining is over. It's fangirl time. So here I am in a post-Hannibal series world. Mads was great, but nothing beats Anthony Hopkins. Movie of the week is Silence of the Lambs. I was today years old when I learned Colleen Atwood did costuming. Guys, do you understand how this got me shook? Like, Fantastic Beasts, Chicago, literally every Tim Burton movie, hello? Atwood designed the famous mask? Ugh, Colleen Atwood is literally my favorite costume designer, the only one I know by name. Unsung hero in the film industry. I loved seeing the Chilton character after everything that happened on the show. They definitely cast well in the show, I just want to say that. It was exciting to see the character, but at some point, during his and Clarice's descent to the deepest chambers, I started holding my breath. I was just so tense until Clarice walked out of that hospital. I've seen this movie a few times now, and it still has this effect on me. And I was just so captivated by Anthony Hopkins. The way that entire scene was filmed, and how him and Jodie Foster acted, this was movie magic. Extraordinary.
Fava beans.
Ted Levine is a phenomenal Buffalo Bill. We love talking about Jodie and Anthony, but dang. This whole movie is just wonderfully cast. Well performed. Levine was creepy and unnerving. I was always uncomfortable during his scenes. It's kind of funny, both in the show and this movie. I feel comfortably captivated by Dr. Hannibal Lecter when he's around. It's the intelligence that differentiates Lecter from all the other psychopaths. They're crazy. He just isn't. Scenes between Clarice and Lecter are a highlight. There was one shot of Clarice with a clear reflection of Hannibal, quite reminiscent to what I watched in season 3 of Hannibal. Lecter easily worms his way into Clarice's mind, and with that Hannibal series mindset, I see the appeal of both sides. It goes to that moment when Clarice told her friend, "Oh, he won't come after me, he'd consider that rude."
To eat the root.
There's a lot to unpack from that when it comes to the analysis of
Hannibal the cannibal.
Hannibal makes his way to Tennessee, and he and Clarice have a final encounter face to face. I don't even know what to say. The extreme close-ups of Hannibal speak louder than words. I feel like Hannibal is psychoanalyzing me. It's chilling. And wow, that escape is unlike anything I've ever seen. I guess the only thing to compare it to is anything I've seen in the series, but wow. Hannibal did this with such little effort. Just go watch it. When I think about this film, this is the part of the movie I remember the most. After this is a great climax with Clarice catching Buffalo Bill once and for all. She saves the day and is recognized for her work. And then the final phone call.
I'm having an old friend for dinner.
Rip Chilton! But man, the credits roll and I always feel satisfied with my movie experience. This really is one of the greatest movies of all time, and Anthony Hopkins is just a legend. So with the show and film fresh in my mind, Mads versus Anthony. Who's it gonna be? Honestly, it boils down to the scripts they received. The creative teams of the film and the show took a different approach to both stories, so while both actors brilliantly captured the essence of Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the nature of the separate projects had them approach this character differently. Both used extreme close-ups, with the film using them constantly. This was most effective with Anthony, who got the death stare nailed down. One glance, you belonged to him. Whereas Mads was given elaborate words and talked his way through his manipulation. Additionally, Mads was playing a free Lecter, blending in with the crowd, and Mads has that charm that is simply seductive. Anthony played a caged Lecter and had more opportunity to portray his haunting aura that held us captive in return. I don't think I can choose a favorite because which one I like more quite literally depends on the day. Mads knows how to be a villain, and Anthony deserved that Oscar. I'll let you decide, but my Hannibal Lecter experience has been more than satisfying. Guys, Brendan Fraser is an Oscar-winning actor. Brendan Fraser was born in Indiana to Canadian parents. The family moved around a lot, living in the US, Canada, the Netherlands, and Switzerland, apparently. He attended a Canadian boarding school in high school and enrolled in college to pursue a degree in acting after he saw a West End production on vacation and was inspired to pursue acting. Fraser made his way to Hollywood in 1991 and appeared in his first film, Dogfight. He went on to play major and minor roles in films of the 90s, such as Encino Man with Sean Astin, School Ties with Matt Damon, and Airheads with Adam Sandler. Fraser starred in George of the Jungle, which is a movie I thought was stupid even as a kid. So if that's the movie you knew Fraser for, just please watch literally any movie I mentioned today. The film was a big box office success, which gave Brendan a few years of good opportunities as he went from the late 90s to the 21st century. This included Gods and Monsters, co-starring with Ian McKellen, and The Quiet American with Michael Caine. This also included The Mummy. 20 points to your Hogwarts house if this is the movie you know Brendan Fraser for the most. It should be. It's pretty much his best movie. The sequel wasn't too bad either. Maybe not the third, but hey, whatever. Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, the entire cast is just so attractive, and it was the perfect balance of action and comedy. Great charismatic characters, decent story, pretty good graphics. This film is iconic. Through the 2000s, Brendan Fraser's projects were a hit or miss, both with critics and box office alike. This included a part in the big Oscar hit Crash. Calling out 90s kids, he was in The Air I Breathe with Sarah Michelle Gellar. He was in one of the Looney Tunes live-action animated hybrid movies, Looney Tunes Back in Action. Fraser, along with one of my childhood crushes, Josh Hutcherson, co-starred in Journey to the Center of the Earth, which is definitely a nostalgic action film that I still enjoy. He was hand-chosen to play Mo in the adaptation of Inkheart by the author of the book herself. Now we get to the 2010s. It's so easy to say Brendan Fraser dropped off the face of the earth because none of his projects were worth talking about, I guess. I mean, I was surprised to see that he was still pretty active, just not making headlines, which still titles him a comeback king, as he and Ke Huy Quan have been lately. He was in a drama film with Harrison Ford. He was a recurring guest star in several episodes in shows like Texas Rising, The Affair, Condor, and was a main actor in the miniseries Trust. He also had a main role in the series Doom Patrol, which I think just ended, but it's got a great cast and seems to be well rated. I might check it out at some point, might be worth a watch. This brings me to the elephant in the room. Well, the whale. The whale has put Brendan Fraser's name back on everyone's radar, and he did it. I haven't been so emotionally invested in Oscar winners since Rami Malek won literally everything for portraying Freddie Mercury. Anyways, so Brendan and Key. I played a piece of Key's Golden Globe acceptance speech, so I'll end with words from Brendan. Congratulations on both Comeback Kings, and thank you for inspiring all of us to never give up.
If you, like a guy like Charlie, who I played in this movie, in any way struggle with obesity, or you just feel like you're in a dark sea, I want you to know that if you too can have the strength to just get to your feet and go to the light, good things will happen. Thank you. Good night.
That's it for this week. Again, follow me on Twitter or leave a comment and let me know what you've been fangirling over this week. Thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you again next week.